What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Hail to the King, 70 years of Godzilla. This is our retrospective of all the films. We're doing 40 films in 16 weeks, and I'm so excited. We got a lot to cover. We just covered in the first episode the first two Godzilla films, the American version and the Japanese version, which we highly suggest you go check out. And then Godzilla Raids Again. We had a really fun time talking about all those and more. But notice I didn't say go see Godzilla Raids Again, but you'll know why if you watch the show. But we're going to get into three great movies tonight. I really enjoyed these, and we're talking about King Kong versus Godzilla from 1962, I believe, maybe 63. Then we're talking about Godzilla versus Mothra, and that's from 1963. And then, of course, we're talking about Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, and that's from 1964. I have great panelists with me. They were here last week, and they're back again. Sir Sturdy from the Horror Sir Sturdy podcast and Popcorn and Pints, and the man, Trevor Stottlemyer, is here talking to us. He's from Ambassador Radio. Go check out these great shows and more. They are linked down below. But let's get him in here and get started. All right, welcome, guys. Thanks so much for joining in again today. We're talking about three more movies in the Godzilla franchise. I'm very excited to learn a lot. You want to kick it right off with the first one, King Kong versus Godzilla?
Sounds good.
Well, I want to ask, what versions did everybody watch? Because I watched the American version.
I watched both versions.
Oh,
what do you say, sir?
I did this. I just watched the American version.
Like version? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Sturdy, can I ask you, before we get into both versions, what did you think of King Kong winning in the American version and Godzilla just disappearing?
Godzilla just disappearing was a little weird, but King Kong winning, it was just one of those things to where I just look at it like any of those big giant creatures fighting each other. It's gonna go back and forth, kind of like a Batman movie. That they're always gonna come back and fight again. So I wasn't like mad or sad. I was like, okay, this is cool. This is fun. And the way they were fighting just looked so because of the way technology is now compared to where it was then. It's hilarious, but not in like a bad way that makes you mad. It's just like funny, like in amazement of how far things have come from that time. Because it's still like, if you think about it, it's really not eons away from these times. I'm just like, wow, that's amazing.
Now, and it really is amazing. And I feel like it started us. And before I talk to the expert and Trevor, I have questions. Don't worry. But
who's that?
This one, you know who's that.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, it shouldn't just say Ambassador Radio Media. It should say expert on all things Kaiju. So that's my guy for the Kaiju and lots of things, actually. Go see Wages of Fear. I will say, watching King Kong versus Godzilla after Godzilla Raids Again and kind of going into this new realm that's going to be the Versus, it seems, saga for a very long time. What were the significant differences, since we didn't see the Japanese version, in your opinion, between the two movies besides the ending?
There's a lot. Well, first thing I wanted to bring up was, how did this happen? How did Godzilla versus King Kong happen? And it actually happened because of Willis O'Brien, the creator of stop motion itself, Mr. King Kong. Continually, again and again and again, he'd bring these ideas or scripts to Hollywood after doing King Kong, and it's too expensive. It's too expensive. If you look at his IMDb, he barely did nothing but shorts, but he was the one that finally said, hey, I'm taking my property, King Kong, to Japan, and I want to see what they do with it. So the creator of Kong is actually the catalyst for King Kong versus Godzilla. Now, one of the things that I never cared for the US version of King Kong versus Godzilla. I thought it was silly, disjointed. I thought the fight scenes were horrible. I just didn't care for it. The Japanese cut is significantly different. It makes sense. Number one, Taco actually makes sense why he's freaking out all the time and talking about pharmaceuticals, because he runs a television show about like the bizarre, like cryptids and UFOs, and it's sponsored by Big Pharma. So that explains why he's all crazy and stuff. So, it is a satire of not just big business and consumerism and advertising, which had been done before by, a fellow traveler of Inashiro Honda and friend of his, Inashiro, guy who did Black Test Car. Excellent stuff. But the big thing that got me is I'm watching it. The pacing is amazing. There's this whole espionage concept to it, a big one. And I wanted to ask you guys, because you guys watched the US version. And I watched the US version and I didn't notice it, but there is a scene where, okay, so finally it makes sense why Godzilla comes back. He's in the iceberg from Godzilla again, and the jet streams change, and there's a sub, the Seahawk, and there's a scene in which there's flames, and I remembered in the US version that was it. In the Japanese version, you hear the classic Godzilla roar.
Mhm.
And something small like that was significant enough to me. And the fight scenes, I mean, they were like a wrestling match. It was unbelievable. Now, the ending is actually very similar. So they fall into the ocean, hence the earthquake in this version, and King Kong leaves, and they basically go, is Godzilla dead? I don't know, and that's it. But it's I think it is a amazing film in the Japanese version.
I would hard argue. I love the original King Kong for the filmmaking aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad you shined some light on that for me, because I always wondered, and I always had a big argument. Sorry, I love to hear your take on it. King Kong was always boring to me until this new Godzilla versus Kong iteration, is because it was the same story over and over. Not that they're bad and they would add new elements to it. Not that I didn't like it or thought it was a bad story, but it's like the reason you kind of get tired of Dracula time over time. You know, it's the same story over and over again, and it just gets really kind of wears it out a little bit. So.
Well, that's why King Kong 33 is wonderful and Mighty Joe Young kind of blows.
True. You can't even steal the idea, but I did like the American version of this. I think it was a really well done for the time in America. I do see the significant differences between the Japanese versions and the filmmaking and the respect they put into the movies. But like I could see me enjoying King Kong versus Godzilla, especially after something like Raids Again. But Story, what did you think about this movie, man? What were some things you took away?
Honestly, again, I didn't mind it, and this is more so when I was telling you guys before how watching these films, you know, when I think of Godzilla, I think of fighting and all this other crazy like this, but all the way through is what I think of when I see of guys. When that's just my first thought when I thought of Godzilla. And I know it wasn't fighting all the way through, but it was enough fighting. I was entertained by it. And for it being like a first time watch too, like it's not hard to watch the movie, but it's hard to like really for me to like try to grasp that fandom, I guess, so to speak, because I didn't like maybe if I started at a younger age or maybe going through these movies more, maybe I'll kind of gain it more. You know what I mean? Like I don't dislike them. They're not bad, but I'm glad I'm watching them. I'm glad I'm getting the chance to learn about them, watch them, see them, and at least be in the conversations about them. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. It's just, 'cause it's like it's a fun thing. It's these big ass creatures fighting. Like how could you not? How could at the end of the day, how can you not at least be entertained by it? Which I am.
I love Ishi Subaraya is amazing. The guy did things that nobody else could. But I have to say, in both versions, that Kong suit was really crappy.
Yeah, and I was actually just thinking that
What's
as
with his
30.
arms? They're like,
Oh yeah, but I was thinking about that. It would have been interesting to see the fight scenes as stop motion. I'm surprised that Godzilla didn't, jump into that. The filmmakers.
Okay, you mentioned something. I'm sorry to interrupt again,
Please.
but yet again, it comes with the difference between the versions. But some of this made it into the U.S. version. One of the interesting things about the King Kong versus Godzilla on a special effects level is you had them do a couple things very differently. The live squid, which Iji Subaraya actually killed and then made food for the crew from that squid, or squid, long live. But it also included stop motion, the tentacles, the grabbing. This was something that Subaraya always wanted to do, but never felt he could do it well. And well, it's not that great, but there's more of a playfulness with the special effects in Godzilla versus King Kong versus any of the movies. Because it's got the live squid, it's got the stop motion. There are a couple times that, in the wrestling matches between Godzilla and King Kong, there's stop motion inserts. So, yeah.
I love that. Wow, I didn't realize that. And I just thought it would have been cool because in the later movies we see a lot of. And I don't know where everybody's at in terms of rewatching or where you are, but like in the later movies, I feel like I'm seeing a lot more experimental filmmaking with animations and stuff like that. So, kind of for the times that were kind of popular, and I'm digging it. It doesn't always work, again, like Ghidorah with the animation. And I talked about the bubbles in our group chat today, the comic bubbles. Yeah. So it's not that it doesn't work, but I kind of like when Godzilla starts to experiment in that way, the filmmakers do. I wouldn't mind seeing a Godzilla stop motion movie, to tell you the truth. I think that would be an interesting one.
That should have been done. With what Toho, with what they're doing with it, you have no idea where they're going to take the series. So it could be a thing someday. You never know.
I'm so excited. I almost want to see them sort of tackle their own sort of legendary storyline.
Which is actually something I wanted to touch upon when we get to the end of these 3 films.
I cannot wait. It's going to be a great time. Ooh. All right. So let's so with King Kong vs. Godzilla, ultimately, as we're watching along so far, where does this fit? So we've watched about 4 films 6, but you know what? Let's save this for after, because I want to see where it fits with these 3 and the other 3.
Okay.
So let's get into it. So now we've established King Kong vs. Godzilla, and then we're going into another versus film where we have Godzilla facing off against Mothra, who's famous in his own kaiju film. What is the significance of Mothra and Godzilla meeting? I'd love to ask you that, Trevor, before we get started and talk about the movie.
Well, okay, so I'm going to have to talk about what I said before, which is fine. So, no, that's no big deal. It actually works out beautifully. So you have to think, like, Legendary is building a monster verse. Well, it actually ended up that this was done by Ishiro Honda. Ishiro Honda built a monster verse. He also had the same screenwriter, the same special effects director, the same producer. He was in it. He had a stock company of actors for 6 films. So, and also, you got to remember, he released Rodan and he released Mothra. These movies are coming out at a pace of like 2 a year. It's nonstop. So they're assuming there are going to be sequels. So it would be absurd not to think that Honda and his crew weren't going, okay, so what direction are we taking this? Are we going to introduce these monsters and then start pairing them in verses and then lead to the 3rd film, which is a different style of pair up? So, if anybody wants to say, well, Legendary in their monsterverse, I'm like, the crew of the first Godzilla did that for like 6 films. In my opinion.
Yeah, it's true. And you're right. And I kind of now, Sturdy, how much of the Legendary films have you watched? The new ones that are out? Oh, I still hope
nothing. Honestly, nothing really. Just maybe here and there, something's on TV, I'll catch something, but I never know which is which. I mean, all right, I can tell the difference if it's from like these times and the newer times, but other than that, I mean, like, I don't know the storyline or nothing.
And the Roland Emmerich version stands out like a sore thumb, no matter what.
Oh my God! You mean Jurassic Park Light?
The turd. Yeah.
Jesus. And I'm not putting down Jurassic Park. It's a brilliant film, but they made that thing look like a T-Rex. Jesus. Yeah. I'm not looking forward to getting to that one, but I am, because I'm going to have lots of rants in that episode. For sure. So I do think what Legendary is doing, putting everything together, and the reason I'm comparing it to these early films, because it's very reminiscent. Like it is Toho's formula, that they're taking, but I think they're doing it right. I like the setups, and I really like actually. If I'm being honest, I like the storyline of Ghidorah better in Legendary than I do in these, which we're going to get to the 3rd film anyway. And it's not so much the appearances. I do love Ghidorah, King Ghidorah later and such, but there's just something like I like a good story, a good flow for each of these characters, because but the ones in the Legendary films that I've cared about every character I've watched in Godzilla so far. All of these films, I've cared about them. The Legendary films, I don't care about any characters till this TV show just started.
I haven't seen a TV show. I'm
Oh,
very
it's wonderful. It's wonderful, and it matches perfectly, and it actually gives you characters to care about in the show besides the kaiju. So I just wanted to end. So going back, it's amazing to me that these early films, like even when they're in Japanese and sometimes dubbed. I did watch the Mothra vs. Godzilla dubbed. But and to bring me to my next question on this, what did you watch the dubbed version, Sturdy, of Mothra, or did you watch the?
No, I ended up watching the dub version just because
Yeah,
it was easier when I was working. I was like,
I
I
get it.
can't. I love subtitles, but I don't have time to read them right now.
I know, I get it, man. Yeah,
Oh, I
I
understand that.
couldn't find one for Gigan, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to just not work for like an hour and a half. I just have to watch this because I'm really into it. But for you, Trevor, like the different versions there, was there significance?
There's really very little difference. It's just in the translation. But I'll be the first to say okay, so Godzilla versus Mothra was marketed in the United States as Godzilla versus the Thing. And it's just a solid, wonderful film. And it introduced the Peanuts, which I've got to love the fact the Infant Island twins are known as the Peanuts, at least in all translations. It really, Mothra, and this is funny because Legendary did take this and they did run with this. Mothra is really the most important kaiju in that mixture.
I believe that.
Mothra has to be a feminine of some kind because she is. They are maternal, and that's the whole thing with Mothra, because Mothra is by nature supposed to be Mother Nature. So it's easier to understand, like, in Mothra versus Godzilla, why Godzilla can still be the villain.
And I feel it worked. Like, Sturdy, how did you feel about because this was your first introduction to Mothra then, right?
Yeah, it really was. I believe I know I've heard the name, but I've never just never connected the dots, never watched it or never seen Mothra at all until this film. And it was interesting because I'm like, all right, now Godzilla's fighting this flying thing. How are they gonna make this work? I'm like, oh shit, that's how. Like that's how they answered the question like right after. And it like, of course, the cheesiness of it, and because of when it came out, it's funny to watch, but it's still like, this is kind of cool. And I see what they were doing at that time, and I can only imagine what they would be doing if they had like the technology we have now. What they would be doing with that, it would be amazing. Because I'm just like, they already have the story.
Yeah,
It's just putting the visuals together, and they're doing the best they can. And they're actually going. They're like taking that extra step. They're going that limit. Like, listen, we're gonna knock it out the park, or we're not gonna do anything at all, basically. And that's one thing I love about foreign film, especially when it comes to, not to veer off, but like to the horror realm, is they really go that extra mile and make you're really sitting in your seat like, oh my god, they really just did that. And in a different way, in a less scary. Well, no, actually, big ass creatures fighting is scary as hell. So, in a different kind of scary way, maybe more in a comical scary way, in a sense.
Yeah.
You see these two beings fighting and telling like this story, or as you were saying, like a wrestling match. And you're just like, shit, this in a weird. How the hell does this make sense? It does. I don't know how to explain it, but how does this make sense?
I was just actually going to ask, Sturdy, as far as, watching these effects and everything. It's even more amazing to understand that, these films were being spit out 2-3 a year. And Iji Subaraya, I don't think ever slept. I mean, just insane.
This movie for me was fun. When I saw it, I knew who the monsters were. So like growing up, like unless you watch these from beginning to end, right from the beginning, it's you're gonna see like different characters, different monsters, kaiju in it that you're like, who are these people? I've never seen them before, or who are these monsters? So Mothra I've known about, from other movies. Rodan I knew about from other movies, and King Ghidorah I knew first from the King Ghidorah movie. So like that's what I attribute to him. So when we get to Mothra versus Godzilla, and I watched this for the first time, like, why is Godzilla the bad guy in his own movie? Because I didn't know Mothra and Rodan and all of them had movies. I thought they were just monsters they were throwing up against Godzilla back in the day. I had that very American way of thinking. And, so when I started doing more research, I went and saw Mothra and saw the difference of who Mothra is in their films versus who Godzilla represents in their films. And then even Rodan and such. And all of these monsters have such great representation. Well, I want not all of them, but some of them have really great representation of many things. It's an allegory to many great things. It broke my heart at the end when we see Mothra essentially, as we know it, die at the hands of Godzilla. Like, and I hate to say I'm spoiling it, but it's came out in 1961 or 62, so too bad.
Well, it's also important with Mothra that you understand that Mothra, represents rejuvenation. And there's always a new Mothra. If Mothra falls, there's always another one coming.
Yeah. And I love that. That's such a beautiful sentiment. And the fact that they become allies later on, even more so. And Mothra is the voice of reason. Like you said, we're going to get into the next movie and how that kind of plays out. But not just in the next movie. Like, Mothra's the one that will come up and be like, you guys need to stop. Like, like, sort of thing. Like,
literally in the next movie, Mothra does that.
Yeah.
No, so it always felt good to me. But before we go on to the next movie, to me this is like a really cool little trilogy of films. I feel like you could take these 3 films and just show it to people who don't know Godzilla and be like, it'll make sense. Like, Godzilla's starting off fighting one, like an epic beast that we've known throughout history and film, and then going on to other famous to take on finally a big villain. So I really do like these 3 films together. I'm glad this worked out. I didn't do this on purpose to put these together, but it really does feel this way. And the tone of all 3 have just been truly fantastic, in an enjoyable way. So going on to the next one, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Could you share a little history on that movie and how this new character gets introduced and how this kind of came about?
Well, the movie's interesting to begin with, because it yet again it takes on almost like an espionage 007 style plot. So this film has a really distinct plot outside of just the monsters. You'd mentioned about the Legendary and how you like how Legendary is set up, and it is the idea of the Monsterverse all being basically Earth centric. Ghidorah is a continuation of another film that Honda did that year called Ghidorah, which was about a space amoeba, and it ends up being more about the characters and that, but it's a space amoeba that is attracted to radiation, so it sticks together. The next step is the idea that, okay, so ecology has become just as big as the atomic bomb in these films. So you bring in the idea of space, not just as villains, but as characters like the girl from Venus or the princess, that their worlds have been destroyed by Ghidorah because their worlds are so weak. And the Earth is so weak right now that Ghidorah is coming here. Ghidorah is going to destroy this world because it's destroying itself. And that goes into, of course, the next episode, which is Monster Zero, which actually goes into the storyline.
Yeah, and going into that storyline, and but yeah, the fact that it does continue after this, like I was just praising this for being like a really cool contained little series, but I feel like that still could be said in Monster Zero or Invasion of the Astro Monster, Invasion of the Astro Monster, would just be a fun continuation. Like, I do feel like Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster was just it is a good contained movie in my opinion, overall. And Sturdy, let's go. So did everybody? I think I watched the dubbed version of this. It's the only one I could find at the time.
Yeah, same. That's all I could find. Or wait, no, actually, no, I'm lying. I did find an American version on Tubi. It was on Tubi. That's right. That's right. Because yep. I did. I was like, wait a minute, I didn't watch this because I watched it at like 5 o'clock this morning. So there was no way in hell I was reading subtitles at 5 o'clock in the morning.
I don't blame you.
It wasn't gonna work.
I was right there with you. I watched the dub version as well. It's the one I could find. But so, and now, Trevor, I'm sure you've seen both. Is there any significant difference with them?
Just translation.
Just
Truly,
translation.
that's it, and
That's
it's not that big.
so.
But
What do we all
Can I
think?
can I speak on
Mhm.
what I thought was the strangest part of this movie?
Yeah.
It wasn't the three-headed monster. It wasn't Godzilla. It was the twins that
the
just threw
peanuts.
me. Threw me. I was like, "What? Whoa!" Again, I'm watching at 5 in the morning, so I'm like, "Wait, what? This doesn't
Yeah,
make
because
any sense."
I
As
think
everything.
they made them a little more like because they're in
But
Mothra
I
and
watched the
Godzilla
dub
too.
version though too, so I don't know if there was any difference. You said there wasn't any differences though, right, Trevor?
The only thing I'm curious about is when Mothra communicates with Rodan and Godzilla. I remember in the English version, they were dubbed talking. In the Japanese version, the peanuts translate Mothra and the other monsters talking to the humans. So I don't remember, but for some
Yeah,
reason I
I
the
watched them
peanut
do they?
both.
they were talking. Yeah, the peanuts they were
Maybe I
talking
didn't
in the
watch the
dub
dub
version.
then.
And the dub they were talking, and that's what was confusing because I'm like, what the hell? Why are they so little? And they're twins, and I just didn't get it. It didn't bother me. I was just so confused.
That's
I
a
was
great
so
no, no, that's a
confused.
great question. I would love to actually can we explore a little bit more? I don't know enough about them, but can you explain a little more to us, Trevor, about the Peanuts and like why they were so because they're in like 3 films, like right in the
Mhm.
Godzilla universe. So anybody who may be stepping in might want to know a little bit of history. Could you share some of that first?
They're kind of the guardians of the Guardian, which is Mothra. They
Mhm.
are the human voice for Mothra. They're also really cute and really great theme songs too were written for them to sing. It's just kind of part of that whole, mythology of Mothra, and you just accept it. It's like this is, and by seeing Mothra, that makes a difference is you're given that mythology of that film. It's like, okay, this is it. You accept this.
Well, I mean, I like the I liked it. Like that's the weird part. Like I
Mm.
would think like if any other movie, if like some weird random little tiny twins were talking about these big monsters, I would probably be weird, but there's something about these movies
Mhm.
that I'm so happy they're there to kind of fill that void and explain certain things.
Mm.
It's just like it was like a weird but nice plot device, I guess. It was just enjoyable for me. I do like it, but yeah. So, no, I think that's a great question. Yeah, please, like
Mm.
sturdy, because I don't know. Trevor here is a wealth of knowledge, so
The-
I would love to
yeah.
pick your brain on some of that stuff. So,
I'll look into that.
Ghidorah and the three-headed monster, before Invasion of Asher Monster, was this planned? Were these 2 movies planned back to back, or
I believe they were
okay?
because these movies were made so quickly.
Hmm.
And they knew success was imminent. So, when you're writing things that close together, I mean, you literally start thinking about the next script after you wrote the other script.
Yeah.
So, a logic based on that alone, I think existed.
Well, where does this one fall for you, like in terms of the movies? Like, is this like one of the best in your opinion, or and I want this from both of you, like from what you've seen so
Mm,
far, 30.
From the first 6 you're talking?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me think.
You can even as many of you as you have watched so far. It doesn't have to be all of them, but
Okay.
because I know you've watched more. So yeah, like for me, this rate's pretty high. I actually like Invasion of Asher Monster more, and I'll get into that next week when we talk about that show. But that movie, but I think they amped it up a little bit. I liked having the 4 monsters kind of come together. Ghidorah's was a cool monster. I like the suit and how it kind of played out, and the 3-headed element. I thought that was really well done puppeteering for the time.
Tell me about it. The weight of that suit, unbelievable. I mean, the Godzilla suit in itself was 200 pounds.
Mm.
So you can imagine what the Ghidorah was.
Yeah, and did it take multiple people to operate it, or was it?
It was multiple people operating it. Occasionally there were suit actors, but it was like a very, I hate to say flimsy, but more form of puppeteering, except for when he was on the ground.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just thought it was really. I just think this was a cool, and it gave us like I think this in the Showa era. This is the one where we get he was like the biggest bad guy, right?
Mhm. Oh, it's hard to really put these first group of films, rewatching them in an order of favorites. Now, what Ghidorah, in my opinion, really did well was it was the first time it introduced the idea of guardians of the earth. So you've got Rodan, you've got Godzilla. As they speak in the film, they're just pissed off. They feel like, humans are just ruining what is theirs and they should be able to do whatever they want. And Mothra comes in and convinces them, yeah, the humans are idiots. They're not going to figure this out. But if that takes Earth out, we're gone too. So they reluctantly team up, and like a wrestling match, and even wrestling kind of has this kind of mythology in it, they team up together to beat Ghidorah, which is actually kind of an anticlimactic fight because it's not too long, and I'm sorry to say it, but Ghidorah runs away like a little bitch fast.
I like that though. I liked how they play. Well, I mean, I would too if the whole schoolyard's kicking my ass. But
yeah, I mean,
I kind of dug the fight. Like I don't know what it was.
I dug the fight too. It's just I'm like,
it is fast though.
Where'd Ghidorah go? Oh, they're leaving.
Because
Bye.
of that, because if he had stayed any longer, we had to stay in that suit. Get the hell out. Sturdy, what'd you think about this movie, man? I'd love to hear, especially from a horror take too.
From a horror aspect, I mean, you again, just these big ass things. I'm gonna be scared if it's there. Like if they just happen to be outside, I'm like, oh.
What'd you think about Ghidorah as a villain, though?
Didn't mind it, but I liked the fighting with Mothra and I liked the fighting with Kong. But I was just more entertained with that one better. Maybe more so because the fight was so damn short at like that last. You want that last epic battle to feel like an epic battle, not just like a quick beat 'em up and then you run. Like you're talking all that junk, start causing all this trouble, and now you're running. You're supposed to be tough. You got 3 heads.
Yeah, I will say they do a good job in the next one. I think you've seen that one too, where they continue it on, and he comes back. So it's almost like it almost kind of turns into Rocky. Well, actually, he loses both times. Not really, not really Rocky at all. He's just there's no comeback, but he does come back.
Their monster lost. So what do? They kidnap, the monsters that are the guardians of the earth.
Yep. Oh, that was so well done. But yeah, these movies, they really just they've really started me on something of having a lot of fun with them. There's so many weird, odd things in the 60s. They're very hopeful movie. Bright futures, things like that. Because once I started into the 70s, I'm like, and I've talked about this before on my shows about my feeling of the change after the moon landing and everything. But yeah, really, like it comes back down to earth. Like these were all really trying to make it bigger than life. Then it finally get to space, and then they come back to earth pretty hard for a little while. So I'm real anxious to talk about the next 3, which the next 3, so everybody knows, so you can watch along, is Invasion of Astro Monster from 1965, Ebra, the Horror of the Deep from 1966, and Son of Godzilla from 1967, which will open us up to start for episode 4, which is going to be really interesting once we get into that. So before we take off, I want to see if you guys have any final thoughts about these movies, or maybe some things you would like to see based off of what you've seen in these movies going forward. Of course, Trevor, you've seen everything, so I know what happens.
I'm waiting for Trevor's version of everything to come out. That's what I'm waiting for. His tell-all book of Godzilla.
It better come. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to read it.
Honestly, that would be that. See, all joking aside, though, I feel like that would be an awesome breakdown of someone, just because you're such a really die-hard, down-to-earth fan and a respectful fan. And the reason why I say that is because you take the time to not only know every actor, actress, creator's name of these films, but now know how to correctly pronounce the names, that's a hard thing to do. Like,
it is hard. It's very hard
thing to do, to where it's like that takes time and dedication. Me, I'm not going to do that. No disrespect to anybody, but I'm just like, I know how much time and dedication it takes to just learn. Yeah. Even if you don't know the language, just trying to learn how to, just learning names in another language is one thing.
But I think that's the beautiful thing, and to add to that, Trevor, for you about you, and to Sturdy to kind of extend it to you. I think that's just your geek when you have that thing or those things that you are diehard about. Because Sturdy, there's a lot you do too. That where I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. And then I was on your show last night geeking out about Star Trek and Star Wars. So you find that thing where you can dive all in. But
It's true. It is true because it's just always so. I think it's so like amazing seeing it from the outside, even though everybody knows they do it, but just seeing it from the outside, you're like, oh my god, they went that deep on this.
having
And
that
then you're like,
knowledge is
and
so
then someone has to remind you, like knocking on your head, like, yo, you're over here creating like 47 different shows about horror stuff, and then the next thing you know, you're also talking about you have no time to do anything. Like, shut up, Sturdy. But
No,
no, but,
I
but
love to
it,
hear
it's
you
a cool.
talk, so please talk more.
It's a cool thing though, and the reason why I say that too, and jumping over with the popcorn and pints, let's doing Star Wars and Star Trek is again just you hearing you two geek out, and I'm just absorbing. Like, and you guys both are like, "Oh, I'm sorry if I'm taking over." Like, no, I know this ain't even my show. Like, no, go ahead because I'm just absorbing all this knowledge of this stuff, of the fandom of it. Because I'm like, is this how I am when I'm excited about certain movies or certain things? I just go. I'm like, but it's cool to like really be able. And another thing is, it's cool to really like let people get that out because I'm sure there's times in all of that nerd culture, all that nerdism where people are just like, I don't want to hear that, shut up. And then when people finally get to spill their guts out about it, it's like, let them talk about it. Let them talk about it. Because I know you've told me times, Mick, in the past, people don't want to hear that because they're whatever. It's too nerdy. I'm too cool. I wear my hat backwards, so I can't hear this stuff. I don't know what it is. But
One is never
that's
too
another
nerdy.
reason why I'm just
I
like,
love that.
just blurt it out, throw it up, let it out. If they don't want to hear it, they can turn it off, walk away, plug their ears. I don't care because
I'm talking to the people who are enjoying it, so that's what
yeah,
I'm doing.
exactly.
And that's why I'm talking about things I love, and that's a great point. And I want to add that to this. Like, what is your nerdy moment in out of these three movies? What's your big one where you're like, that's the moment where you're like, oh yeah, that was cool.
For me, honestly, and it's probably because it's the first one I watched out of the three, was Kong versus Godzilla. And I was just laughing at the battles. I'm like, oh my god, this is so fun. And
Yeah.
whatever one of the three that I would have started with, I'd had that same feeling. I'll say that stood out to me a lot, and the twin, the peanut, just because it was
That's
just
so
like,
cool.
and out of all things, which I do love about being a fan of film, because we all do this, is how we'll not necessarily complain. You'll point something out in a movie that doesn't make sense in a whole movie that doesn't make sense. Like there's a mass killer that gets shot 4,000 times and gets up, but you're mad because she put the toaster in there that was perfectly toasted in 2 seconds. That's what's getting at you. I'm like, yeah, man, that doesn't make any sense. That's not logical.
I think and I can't wait to hear yours, Trevor. But mine's real quick. That's why I'm just going to jump in because I want to hear what you have to say. As I just kind of like how it almost felt like. I felt like boxing was even because Ali at the time in the 60s was even more huge all over the world. And just to see Godzilla in a few of these fights, like doing the footwork or like, like getting ready to go and fighting Ghidorah, like it gave a real, like, I liked that hero moment. I liked when Godzilla stepped up and was like, all right, like, and I like the direction that it's in now. So because it gave a purpose to the character. So I think my biggest takeaway from these three movies is that it gave Godzilla a purpose, So yeah, Trevor, I'd love to hear what yours were.
Yeah.
I think my geekiest moment was actually watching the Japanese cut of Godzilla versus King Kong and just being mesmerized that it made sense and it was a comedy, it was a satire, it was well thought out. The battle scenes were like wrestling. I mean, the amount of just tail pulling and all kind of stuff. That was my geeky moment. It was like, as a Godzilla fan, when you stumble upon a different cut or something you haven't seen, as a film fan in general, you get really, really excited. Like, okay, cool, I haven't seen this. And then when it actually pays off, talk about a geek money shot.
There you go. There you go.
We're getting into it more and more, and I'm so excited with the upcoming weeks. Like I said, we got 3 more movies coming up next week, so make sure to check that out. We're trying to put these out every Sunday, but keep an eye out. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know when more episodes like this and others come out as well. This is part of our Snobs Film History series, where we talk about different elements of history within filmmaking and film industry throughout time. But this is a specific. We're celebrating this franchise, and we're talking about the history of it and things like that. I want to thank my fellow panelists who have been joining me on this ride. Sir Sturdy from the Horror with Sir Sturdy podcast and the Popcorn and Pints podcast. You want to go check those out and so much more. He's got a new show called Late Night with Sir Sturdy, where they're getting into the really like movies like this, but even more odd, the stuff that you maybe don't hear about, but you should, and it should be celebrated. There's a lot out there in horror, and he's doing it, and I love that. And then I want to thank my other panelist, Trevor Stottlemyer from Ambassador Radio and Media.
Well, thank you for having me as always.
I always do. And before we go, we're going to start with you, Sturdy. If you could just tell them a little bit about where they can find you and what you got going on. And then, Trevor, I would like you to do the same.
Well, really quick, for those of you who watch, I don't know if you're putting this out as audio or just visual, Mick, but at _search30 on TikTok, Twitter, and all those things. Thank Mick for that I made the names all the same. It just makes sense. I finally did it. So that's how you can find me on those. Horror Research 30 everywhere. Popcorn and Pints, YouTube. Popcorn and Pints. We do have to do the same thing with our ats, which we're working on that. We're working on that. It's a group of men. You guys know how we are. We do things late. But no, seriously, come check us out. It's a group of great content creators that love what we do, have a great time, great conversation, and a very diverse group. You can ask Mick. He hangs out with us a lot. But yeah, come check us out. And
yeah, they have their own kaiju on their shows.
No, we don't.
Me.
The shows I've seen, I would do.
Okay.
I hope in the future I will be able to do something with you. I would love that.
I can't freaking wait. Wait.
And if you ever have, and I'll say this, first of all, there's so many wonderful movies that you have recommended to me, Trevor, over the years, and I, following you and seeing what you put out, in terms of recommendations. There's some very cool stuff. Music, movies. This guy knows it. You need to go check him out. Very.
Well, thank you again. That's very, very flattering. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, even I am learn new music from you, classical new music to me. But I do love it, and I want to say thank you guys so much for coming on. Follow them; their links are down below. Appreciate you all for watching. This is our Godzilla celebration. Again, we're gonna have about 16 episodes, all the way up to the new Godzilla and Kong New Empire. So I'm excited for that. Actually, I do want to post one thing. Now, I'm going to save it for that episode.
I had something I wanted to post too, so it's
Does it involve any of these three movies?
Yes, it does.
Okay, you're good. Please go right ahead.
Okay, number one, I have to do a big shout out to an amazing human being named David Kalat, the first person to write academically about Godzilla. So if you want to find out about Godzilla and Kaiju, look up David Kalat. The second thing is I had mentioned Joseph Levine and Joseph Levine's connection to King of the Monsters. That was very important. He was a big guy in Hollywood. Now, I meant to talk about a gentleman named Bryant Halliday when it came to the dubbing and all that kind of stuff. And I know as a fan of films, and I've collected Criterions for years, when Spine 1000 was the Godzilla movie, you had half the people over here going, yay, and half the other people with their noses up. And, it was bad as politics in the United States. But Halliday was the founder of Janus Films.
Oh.
Janus Films created Criterion. Hence why Janus Films has been holding on to the Showa era rights for as long as they have. So there's the direct connection between why there's a Criterion Godzilla box set and Godzilla himself.
Oh, I love that. That's very cool because Janus Films is very famous in the film industry. It's been around for a long time.
I mean, the whole reason why Bicycle Thief or Rome Open City were released in the United States was Halliday. And he dubbed them because that was a sign of respect.
You want to hear something really funny? It's for anybody who doesn't know who the Scene Snobs are, we started in 2013. I started January 1st, 2013, and my whole goal was to watch a new movie I had never seen before every day for the year. And I called it Movies 365 in the beginning, but I couldn't get that website, so I had to change it, and I changed it to the Scene Snobs. But it was written. Yeah, it was only written reviews. That's awesome. But the very first one was the Bicycle. That was and it's a great movie. Started an Italian film. It's fantastic. But that was the very first review. As it was Movies 365 at the time, but it was under the Scene Snobs banner. So it's very cool that you mentioned it today, and I just wanted to put that out there. But I'm going to let you guys go. I want to say, and I appreciate so much joining me on this, and I'm having a ball learning.
Thank you guys, both you guys. Both you guys are amazing, and yet again, I have to say, I think I mentioned it to you earlier. I even posted an interview from 3 years ago that we did. Watching the growth of the scene Snobs is amazing. And you bring up about the website and everything, and that goes into, you know, in the short amount of time, in reality, I mean, you guys have created some awesome shit.
They definitely
And it's
have.
just going to keep on growing, and it's amazing.
Thank you, and appreciate you. And I love having you on, Trevor. You know that. I love our conversations. So I'm gonna actually, I'll reach out to you afterwards. I have some ideas, but we'll do that after. But I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you guys again so much. Thank you all. Remember, be kind, stay classy, take care of yourselves because that's important. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. All right, and then I cut the rest out.